Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, and yeah, thanks for having me. Really honored to be here. All right, so I guess I'll just get into it. So my name is Jack Pongyesva. I work for the Grand Canyon Trust. I'm the program manager for the Intertribal Centennial Conversations Group, and it is a mouthful, so we call it ICCG for short. And my presentation today is excuse me, your name? Your name? Tom. Like Tom said, it's the cultures of character on the Colorado River Rafts, ripples of reverence from simple actions. Here we go. So, the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River are looked at as many things today. I've personally come to find them as the Colorado River as kind of the soul or the root of the canyon. It carved the canyon into its depths. It also is the flowing spirit and life force that really provides the survival for a lot of creatures and indigenous peoples back in the day in the canyon because of the arid landscapes and everything. It's also, the root or, foundation of a lot of the indigenous tribal beliefs and cultures. It really provides significant and sacred sites, and it really is the basis of a lot of the religions that indigenous peoples prescribe to today. It is also the ancestral homeland, as well as the resting place for ancestors to some of these tribes. I'm also a Hopi tribal member, and we believe that we emerge from the confluence, the Little Colorado and the Colorado River, and then when we die, our spirits go there and we rest in the Grand Canyon as well. So it's really like the foundation of that kind of sacred and ancestral spirit world. So today, though, the Colorado is many things. It's natural resources which are important to cities and states, and agriculture, as well as it provides electricity through the Glen Canyon Dam and the hydroelectric power source that it feeds the grid with. When it spins those turbines, releases that water into the Colorado River from Lake Powell Reservoir. It also is a huge revenue generator, especially for the commercial river rafting industry. It's a huge economy, the Colorado River rafting industry, and it really is an economic stimulus for the Grand Canyon, as well as the tourism industry is really invigorated by the Colorado River as well for Lake Powell and different reasons and outdoor activities that people kind of are drawn to the state to experience the Colorado River for themselves. Again, it's very significant to these tribes. So many sacred sites kind of rest on the banks of the Colorado River and within the Grand Canyon themselves to the 11 tribes, which I will get into here in a second. And, again, it is the means of survival or life force or kind of the blood of Mother Earth. It really brings to life this arid and in high desert landscape that kind of is the Grand Canyon, as well as the very hot kind of down deep parts of the canyon as well. It also is a means of survival for those who, river raft through it, as well as camp or do remote kind of camping or canyoneering. Sometimes when you run out of the water that you bring, you have to pump it out of the river, and so without that, there would be, I think, very little activity in that area. So the indigenous people of the Grand Canyon, there's 11 tribes that consider the Grand Canyon to be their ancestral homeland, and these tribes are listed, Havasupai, Hopi, Wallapai, Kaibab Paiute, Las Vegas Paiute, Moapa Paiute, Navajo, Utah Paiute, San Juan Southern Paiute, Yavapai Apache, and Zuni. And I apologize that the Kaibab title got kind of cut off. And this map here is, it kind of shows the traditional territories of these tribes before they were relocated. And then on the right-hand side are their reservations and nations today, where, they were put or after signing treaties and everything. You can kind of see how, obviously, there's so much land that was encroached on, and the freedom of their kind of territories, their traditional territories, was really slimmed down and minimized. So, the commercial river rafting industry is a huge industry in the Grand Canyon, and the Grand Canyon has a huge economy for itself with all the visitors that come to the canyon and everything. And the commercial river economy is kind of a reflection or a microcosm of that. And it's characterized by many things, such as a high market value. Like I said, it has really high revenues and revenue streams. It's also something that is protected in a way as far as economically. because of the 10-year contracts and permits that they sign with the park. So that kind of helps with some of the barriers to entry that exist on the Colorado River today, which there are many. Say, for instance, it would be hard for a tribe to create an outfitter and want to do commercial river trips down the Colorado River because it's very expensive. There are some kind of seniority rights that are applied to the economic sector as well. And it's just really costly as well. So another characteristic of the commercial rafting industry is that they employ a wide variety of river guides. And these are river guides from all walks of life and backgrounds. Most of them do tend to be Anglo or Caucasian, which is fine. They are really, competent and safe, and they know a lot about the canyon. And as the last characteristic I'd like to explain is the clientele. So the river tends to attract kind of the more elite members of society because of the high costs, high ticket values, and the associated costs with going down the river itself. So, it kind of excludes some people from accessing that recreational and magical place down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So there is education interpretation on the river, which I kind of explain. The river guides they shoulder a lot of the responsibility when it comes to, providing passengers on the rafts with education about their surrounding area and what they see. And a lot of that, in a lot of the materials or a lot of the topics they share are, the geology, history of the canyon, history of the river, and like pioneers or I guess trail or river blazers who really were the ones going down the river in the early days before the dam and everything. So, those are fun and cool stories that they can share with their passengers. However, a lot of it does lack, deep indigenous values, perspectives, and history and culture that, they can share with the passengers. So that is one thing that is kind of missing from that whole comprehensive knowledge of the things on the river. So, today's history and, like I said, some of the stuff that the river guides do share with the passengers on these river crafts that or go down the Colorado River in commercial trips, those cultural characteristics of those histories and stories that they share are founded on, some of the systems that were put or at least American society was founded on, which were more on the oppressive side, like capitalism, colonialism, and manifest destiny. And these systems kind of promoted the ideas and values of, profits over everything, industry over nature, and the extraction of resources is kind of the best value of nature. So those are some of the values that were kind of incorporated in those systems, or at least became the product of those systems, as well as, the lack of stewardship, which wasn't really promoted in those industries, obviously, and the preservation and protection of land also was not really represented. Another characteristic of this history and culture is that the idolization of historical figures such as John Wesley Powell, Theodore Roosevelt, and different pioneers, and like I said, river blazers, so to speak. That's a big thing in the interpretive materials and education that they provide with the passengers. And it just goes to show that even though there were some bad parts of history and some of these people had maybe controversial belief systems, history tends to remember the good parts of people and everything. And so, in comparison to these values that I just stated on the Western, more European descendant part of society, on the inverse side or the other side are the indigenous perspectives and values. So indigenous cultures tend to really put nature at the center of their worldview and of their kind of perspective of nature, and this includes the connection to life and the interconnected web of life, and kind of the reciprocity of all living things, the harmony and the balance of the land, and all the things such as the elements, the rocks, the plants, the people, the wind, and it assigns value to everything. Natives kind of view themselves on this planet as having the same value as everything else. So it kind of doesn't put, that hierarchical system where humans kind of are superior to their surrounding environment. This also comes with the understanding of nature and, traditional knowledge such as, plants uses and medicines and different things that can be used and collected for survival in sometimes really rough and rugged places like some of these tribes live in. And also this comes with kind of the daily incorporation and kind of perspective of, the spirit world and of deities and different things, which I think kind of assigns value to different inanimate objects or natures that really gives them kind of a presence that can be, valued and angered or made happy, so that they kind of have that spiritual characteristic and foundation to really like exist in the world and have their own role. So I think that, in order to really blend these cultures and kind of establish common ground and be on the same page, with accepting both of these cultural values and systems, and the need to shift, perspectives and really bring oneself to kind of adopt some of the views of the other culture, which can go both ways. And I think that's necessary for really understanding, how to increase education on the river. So the first step is really changing the way river guides and passengers see the canyon itself. And that would be to, try to give them an understanding and perspective of how Indigenous people see the canyon, the river. And so they can kind of, that might be a cultural lens, and really try to provide them, with a viewpoint, that's similar to, in a way, to how Indigenous people view the landscape and the canyon and the river. And I think due to that, there can be a, building of common ground, and, Indigenous people and river guides and outfitters can really view the canyon and really establish the future together, and with education, interpretation, and kind of build that historical pathway. I think it might be mutually beneficial as well to do this, because, the tourism industry is huge in the Grand Canyon. And, there's kind of been a huge call and desire for more Indigenous education from visitors and passengers to kind of provide that cultural component to some of these interpretive systems, hiking, river guiding, different things that are already offered at the canyon and on the river. So I think tourists really want that kind of cultural side of things and that Indigenous integration. So I think it would be mutually beneficial to the park, the outfitters, and the tribes. And so this can be done through, an increased Indigenous education, and, like I've kind of gone over, this will be difficult to achieve. It really takes the incorporation of these, incongruent values and perspectives in order to really build this kind of education in a fundamental way and concrete way. But I think that it's necessary, and even though it's hard, and by doing this, we can kind of, like I said, build a future and provide a framework and understanding to kind of make the river a more comfortable and safe place for Native Americans to be on the river, just because the socially economic hierarchies that I explained, different things that natives might not be comfortable with or have access to, really can make the river an uncomfortable place. Also, I think that it might provide a pathway towards the infiltration of pop culture. Maybe infiltration is the wrong word, but my hope is to really bring Native education to the forefront of the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River, so that when people think back on their visit to the canyon and on the river, they think of the geology, the jaw-dropping views, and then also, Native Americans and their culture and how they connect to the canyon and their history. So, I think that hopefully can be achieved, and I think that will really benefit all around with, Native youth and everything coming back to their culture because of that popularity. This can also, increase respect and reverence for the canyon, and kind of provide another way to look at it and hopefully build on those connections that I think a lot of river guides and interpretive staff have to the canyon. We all have a special connection. I think that this might offer maybe a deeper meaning or some way to get to a different understanding and appreciation for the canyon that they might not have already. So a good place to start is to kind of utilize different education systems that are built specifically for the river and for river guides, which at Grand Canyon Trust, ICCG is developing such a curriculum. So I think integrating things like that and really trying to create an environment where we can educate river guides and make sure they're comfortable by facilitating classroom type facilitation sessions for learning and comprehension. I think that's really key, so that it can be an efficient and effective way of educating the guides themselves. There already was something that initiative called the Native Voices of the Colorado River that did this a couple years back. And we're really trying to build off that to really incorporate the values and learn from what happened with that. I think by doing this, it will really improve the education on the river, and which will also, create that awareness, and hopefully by that, it will result in better communication avenues and lines between the tribes and the outfitters. And I think by doing that, like I said, we can really build a better future through interpretation, education, and different, awareness and cultural systems that can provide that foundation and basis for, a safer environment, more inclusive environment, as well as kind of increased accessibility for tribes to kind of be on the river. And, I think it's really essential to act now because, with social awakenings that are the result of things like, the George Floyd incident and different unfortunate, spouts of violence and tragedy, I think that, the country is really spurred to, call to action the communities and people of this country, and to really focus on things like, equity, diversity, inclusion, and bring better equality to all the peoples of color and communities throughout the region and the country. I think that this is a special time for social awareness, and I think that this can really that can really help the movement that I'm trying to explain. This increase of Indigenous education and social awareness on the river itself. So I think also it can really help provide, like I said, that cultural lens. So hopefully people can have a deeper understanding by having the perspectives of nature-centric views and the value of each living thing and each inanimate thing in the canyon, kind of the role that plays in seeing that kind of big picture, wholesome view of how things are and the importance of that balance. Also, I think that another way to kind of perpetuate this once, hopefully the Indigenous and education is starting to increase, is to establish internships for tribal members to then be able to access the river more and go down the river on these trips, and hopefully be able to provide the education themselves. Because right now we're trying to teach these kind of Western or Anglo or Caucasian guides, and who are very competent in what they know and say to the passengers in a lot of ways, but just that piece of Indigenous knowledge and heritage is missing a lot. So by facilitating a way to teach them to start with that and create that cultural awareness and that kind of safe place on the river, we can then have internships for tribal members to kind of take that over and start, having that interpretation themselves, hopefully. So that's kind of the aim of also the curriculum from ICCG. That's kind of the last component, is to really focus later on after we start the education sessions on, solidifying those opportunities for tribal members down the road. So in conclusions and, the hopes for a future, by overcoming these cultural congruencies and kind of trying to establish that common ground and understanding for each culture and one another, we hope to build a better and respectful, more reverent place for everyone, especially to kind of incorporate the views and values of Indigenous people. Also, this might take the adjustment of one's character or framework of values and inner perspective, which can be hard to kind of change because everyone has kind of the innate, ingrained values that have been kind of instilled in them their whole life. Every culture does. So by kind of swapping and adopting each other's views, I think that, we can really better open lines of communication and value systems and common ground to really go forward together and build a better commercial industry for every society and people of color. And hopefully that will benefit the world by, having a contribution to making the world a better place. Also, I think that by integrating these systems that are designed for guides, like this curriculum or other systems that come into play or other things that tribes are working on, or different, education sessions that anyone can learn from. So maybe like resource materials and a list of books that are certified by tribes. I think that those are great ways to really increase this education and, get to these goals. As well as, I think it's necessary for these things to happen to really have conversations with everyone involved in the river and in the canyon, such as National Park Service, outfitters, tribes, the river guides of the outfitters, as well as organizations like the Grand Canyon Trust, the Grand Canyon River Guides, Grand Canyon River Outfitter Association, different organizations that can kind of help move, with that process and kind of like moderate those conversations and facilitate those. And then, lastly, by implementing all these concepts I've gone over and by really doing all this together, I think that we can increase the education on the river and really make the world a better place. And, by affecting the, commercial industry in a positive way through education, as well as the tourism market to really provide that cultural heritage and foundation that visitors and passengers are looking for. So thank you.